Welcome to In the Press Box. I'm Sean Bisson here today with Harrison Kane and Mark Amendolia. We got a ton of topics to cover today, and Marky's here with the lineup. What's it looking like?
Thanks, buddy. So today's lineup, we got Chicago and Los Angeles. We're going to recap that game from last night as Los Angeles finally took Game 3 as they're still down 2-1 in that series. And we're going to go on and talk about Boston and Pittsburgh. Big night tonight in Beantown for the Pens as they look to try to get on track as they're already down 2-0 in that series. Then we're going to move on and talk about visors and whether we think they should be mandatory as the rules just got passed by Matthew Schneider, actually one of the assistant directors for the NHL. Then we're going to talk about the struggling Jays, Josh Johnson on the mound yesterday as they went down and dropped their fourth in a row. And then finally going to 5 minutes of fame where we talk about a topic a minute. First, Duncan Keith and the slash last night on Jeff Carter. And we're going to talk a little bit about Tiger and the U.S. Open and finally ending off with our favorite sports movie of all time.
All right, Harrison, let's go to the Chicago versus LA series and kind of give us your thoughts on how the turn that took as we finally have a series on our hands now.
Oh, I think that's just the first two games. LA definitely looked pretty tired and pretty beat down because if you look at their last playoff run, they just quick count in my head. They played only 21 games last playoff. They had about a week in between all their series. So I just think they're not used to the having to play both series back to back, if you know what I mean. And I think now coming home, they're finally got their game in order because they weren't like disciplined. They weren't very well organized. I think Chicago definitely took advantage of that. And but I think LA's now a bit rested and are ready to go the rest of the way. We're going to have a long series on our hands.
Now, the only thing that I kind of question is Chicago was undeniably the best team in the NHL during the regular season. Absolutely the best team. So are people kind of surprised that the Kings are doing so poorly, or is this kind of par for the course? Like, Chicago should be the favorite to win the Stanley Cup in theory, shouldn't they?
It's about playing styles, I think, mostly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you look at the way Boston's playing right now. They look a little unstoppable after a bit of a weird series with the Leafs where a lot of people thought the Leafs were only going to, win a couple of games, ended up going to 7, and that you thought that would take a little bit of steam out of the Bruins, but, they came out in the Rangers series and, pretty much put them to sleep. And then and in this one here, they're just pretty much, handling the Penguins as they wish. So, I don't know. In terms of the Chicago Blackhawks, though, you got to look at a guy like Brian Bickle, scored the game winner in Game 1. He's got 2 goals and an assist for 3 points in 3 games, and I guess putting him on the top line has really made all the difference in this series.
Because it's talking about playing styles, the playoffs is such a NHL playoffs. There's nothing like it in sports. It's such a war of attrition, and after a long regular season, you need the teams that are
a short one in this year's case.
Exactly. But it's the big team. It's the teams that play physically, play disciplined, organized, that can good on the forecheck, that can really break teams down. So I think for the most part, I take a big physical team over a mostly skilled team in the playoffs. So that's why I think I give LA any favorite. Like I put LA to be a favorite in any series just because the grind you down style of play that they play with.
I think I completely agree with that. I think they had one of the best series in recent memory with
Blues,
the
right?
St. Louis Blues to start this playoffs off. Like that was absolutely the most exciting series of the playoffs so far. Hitting, there was scoring, there fighting. Like that series had everything that you're looking for in the NHL playoffs. But the only thing that's kind of surprised me is LA hasn't been able to recapture that kind of style of play moving forward. Didn't see it as much against San Jose. And now, with the exception of last night where, like you said, Los Angeles looked like a completely different team at home, Chicago's combination of Taves, Kane, Sharp, Hossa, it's not looking like it's going to be stopped. And that's the exact same thing with the Merlot line out in Boston right now. They are doing things to Pittsburgh that nobody thought would be possible.
And Isn't the Merlot line the fourth line?
Yeah, absolutely. The Merlot line is the 4th line in Boston, and that line has been the most dominant fourth line I think I've ever seen.
Well, yeah, and then, I mean, you got players on Chicago stepping up like Michael Handzus, who had a bit of a pretty poor regular season, only a goal and an assist in 28 games for the Sharks before he got traded to the Hawks, where he only had a goal and 5 assists in 11 games. Then he comes into the playoffs, 2 goals, he had one the other night, and 6 assists for 8 points, and you're looking for a veteran guy like Michael Handzus. I think he's about 36 years old and, trying to win a cup, but he's just performing on the ice and helping that second line out a lot.
So if we're going to really break it down, to me, I think the key for Los Angeles to get back into this series and even it up in Game 4 tomorrow night has got to be the play of Anze Kopitar. And they need Mike Richards back, absolutely. Like, Jonathan Quick has been absolutely stellar. Other than getting pulled, I think it was in Game 2 that he got pulled. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been the Conn Smythe winner again for the Los Angeles Kings as far as I'm concerned so far this playoff. Haven't seen a whole lot out of Kopitar. Dustin Brown has
got to win. Anze's got to win some face-offs.
Yeah, Los Angeles is really struggling in the face-off department, although getting Stoll back in the lineup is definitely going to help that out. It's just the guys that won the cup for LA last year aren't doing it for them this year.
Anze's got to get some sleep. He looks like he has huge bags under his eyes, out partying out in LA all the time.
Well, I mean, I kind of thought that would be the Jeff Carter and Mike Richards thing, but yeah, Anze Kopitar always looks tired. I've been hanging out with the TSN panel too much.
Yeah. All right, boys, let's move on to the Pittsburgh-Boston series, which Game 3 tonight in Boston. How do you think Pittsburgh's going to fare in this one?
I think, honestly, this is a win-or-go-home game for Pittsburgh. If they lose tonight, this series is swept on, Friday night that Game 4 is going to go. If they don't win this game, it's done. And I think you're going to see a lot of the blame put on the shoulders of James Neal, Sidney Crosby, and Evgeny Malkin, simply because those guys are paid the amount of money they are to score goals, and Pittsburgh has 1 goal in this series so far. That's unacceptable.
They're just too casual out there. And I know Evgeny Malkin, it seems like he's getting back into it. He was slicing through Boston doing the vintage Evgeny Malkin down the middle dominant move, but he's all season I noticed this, just doesn't finish his checks. He's just a passenger way too much, especially in the defensive zone, and especially against a Boston team like this. You got to up the physical ante because they're just an organized team who shows great physicality out there. And as big as you are, if you can't cut it, they're going to pound you into submission, and they need their big stars to start grinding and put a little bruise on the bees.
I absolutely agree with you. And I know we talked about this earlier, off the air, but Evgeny Malkin, come on, you got no hits in Game 2. You're one of the biggest guys on the ice. You can really throw your weight around when you want to, but when you choose not to, it does some damage. You got to play that up-tempo type of game, and Boston's that type of team, and you saw it, earlier on. The Rangers couldn't match it. The Leafs, they had to step up their game a little bit, and you saw the hits flying. The Leafs obviously number 1 in fighting majors in the league, and that's not something that you kind of turn to during the playoffs. But in terms of hits, both teams were dishing it out, and as you said, Sean, that's what made that St. Louis series so intense and so tight, were the amount of hits being dished out either way, and just the up-tempo kind of aggressive style of play.
See, I don't think it's necessarily Evgeny Malkin has to go to throwing the body around. Yes, they need the team to be more physical altogether. But if you look at the way Pittsburgh has played their game so far this series, they've been playing so much one-on-one action. There hasn't been that dominant five-man unit that develops so much offense for them throughout the season. And I think they need to get back to that. You see Chris Letang will bring the puck up the ice. And whereas previously, when they're having their success against the Islanders and against Ottawa, you would see them dump the puck in and establish a forecheck. But now it's dipsy doodle, try to step around guys at the blue line, make the cutesy little pass. And quite frankly, this team that's playing in the playoffs against the Bruins right now for the Pittsburgh Penguins, they look like the Edmonton Oilers team that struggled so badly throughout the year to generate any offense with all that firepower simply because they want to make the cute passes.
Well, yeah, they can't establish the forecheck in the zone. And, I mean, you're right. Although, hits are important, it's other than the hits. But being aggressive in your own zone and be able to, use the boards to kind of shuffle the puck along. You see the Boston Bruins do it so well every game in and game out, just using their big bodies. And I mean, even if you're not a big guy, you got guys like, Corey Conacher when he was playing. What made him and Brendan Gallagher so effective as first-year rookies was the fact that they could use those boards in their small stature, but they used them well.
And that's where Boston's dominating. They are cycling the puck so well right now. And we don't have to, you don't even have to look at the amount of highlight clips of guys like Crosby and Malkin cycling the puck. We know the way that they can cycle the puck. We haven't seen that puck possession. We have not seen any cohesiveness in the offensive zone so far from that team. And I think that's what Pittsburgh needs to establish tonight to win. And if they don't do that, like I said, the series is good as over. And I know some people are going to say, oh, you're crazy, you're focusing on the offense. Like, they have a goaltending problem right now. To me, there's not so much of a goaltending problem because you can allow 2 or 3 goals a game. When you're that high power of an offense as Pittsburgh is, you should be scoring at least 3 goals a game. And every time they scored 3 goals a game in this playoff so far, they've won. They need to get their forwards producing for them to win and not worry so much about having Thomas Vokoun, who's essentially their backup goaltender, come through in the clutch and win the games for them.
All right, boys. So let's move on here to the new visor rule. And Harrison, I'm going to ask you first and foremost what your opinion is on this. So basically, Matthew Schneider, basically is the National Hockey League's Players Association special assistant. They did a poll where they asked the players where they stood on visors, and there was a huge outcry for mandatory visors to be worn in the NHL. Approximately 73% of NHL players today wear visors. So basically, once it went through the polls and the paperwork was drafted up, it came into consideration, and now it's going to be an actual reality where visors will be mandatory for those players who have played less than 26 either playoff or regular season games in the NHL. So essentially, if you're a rookie coming in, it's mandatory for you and guys that have only played 26 games in the big league. So Harrison, what are your thoughts on the visors? And as a guy who played hockey himself, when you didn't wear the visor, did you find that it for some guys maybe it kind of obstructed your view a little bit?
Not in the slightest. I've kept my cage on. I've been a dust and kept my cage on for my whole career. It's probably why I'm stuck up in the press box right now. Yeah, but you know what? For me, it's you gotta suck it up. It's a preventative measure. They've got everyone's best interest in mind. Like, it's just. For me, I just thought guys were really cool when they didn't have visors, like the no-vise beauties, if so to speak. And yeah, but that's the only thing. Like, who cares? Suck it up. No one, like, it's before someone's a player that everyone loves, his career ends and becomes blind. Like, it's gonna happen eventually, and it's. At the end of the day, some players are going to be upset, but you got to suck it up and just learn to do it. Get with the times.
I know none of us were around for this, but some of our older listeners may remember back in 1980 when the NHL grandfathered mandatory helmets into the league, and the players who were in the league before 1980, guys like Craig McTavish, could play without a helmet on. Guy Lafleur, you remember that flow coming down the ice. He was able to keep playing in the NHL without having a helmet on. Excuse me. I think it's a good thing for the league, but I think it's a good thing for 2 reasons, actually. I agree with what both of you guys have said as far as the health is concerned. Like Mark Stahl, what we saw with that happen earlier this year.
It can't happen ever again.
No, you do not want to see someone potentially lose their eyesight and be paralyzed or crippled for the rest of their life because of a game. And the other reason I think it's good is because I'm going to use a favorite phrase of Brian Burke here. We're going to finally see who the real rats in the NHL are with having this visor rule come in. We're going to know who the tough guys are real quickly, and we are going to see the likes of players like Antoine Roussel, who instigates fights every single game, but refuses to take his helmet off when he wears a visor. Would rather see guys screw their hands up by punching visors. I think this is a good thing because now we really get to see who the tough guys are. Going to separate the men from the boys at this point, and guys who are out there to instigate and just cause shit, They're not going to be able to do that anymore.
Well, couldn't you argue that they would, you could still just keep the visor on when you're in a scrum or whatnot, and still, even if you're in a fight, there's going to be guys who aren't going to throw their visors off. I mean, you see it all the time because it's mandatory in the OHL and the CHL and whatnot. But, guys who are dropping the gloves will wear the visors. You saw, obviously guys like, Nazem Kadri do it when he was down there playing with the Knights. And I feel like it's... I see where you're coming from, but it's not necessarily going to prevent players from dropping the helmets.
I think the biggest difference between the CHL and the NHL is that you're automatically suspended if you take your helmet off in a fight, whereas in the NHL, guys that don't even wear visors will take their helmets off before a fight out of respect for the other player. Now, because you have some of those guys that are grandfathered, like Paul Bissonnette has been explicit on Twitter about he's not gonna be putting a visor on. He has the option not to because he's already played 160 some odd games in the NHL, which is pretty decent for a fourth liner that only gets 2 minutes a night every other week. So you're gonna have those guys that they're going out there without a visor. They know their face is exposed when something like this happens. And no, obviously the ultimate reason for putting these visors on is player safety. But I think the state that the NHL is in right now, you have guys that are running around there just trying to cause problems without actually standing up for their actions. And now you're going to be forced to really stand up for it because guys aren't going to tolerate. Well, I shouldn't say they're not going to tolerate, but guys are going to go the extra mile to really put a hole in your face if you challenge them to a fight with a visor on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess to each their own, but yeah, it'll be tough. I don't think it obviously makes the game a lot safer in terms of pucks flying towards the net, going off a skate into the eye. We saw it with Manny Malhotra. We saw it with Mark Fraser. Obviously that's a big thing. You don't want to get 100 mile an hour puck to the face and have to go down. Could be a career ender or even worse than that. Luckily, we haven't seen anything that bad yet. But in terms of fighting, you may have something there. But I mean, I feel like there's going to be players in the league that are going to disrespect that kind of camaraderie when it comes to dropping the gloves on the ice. And you will get the guys who will be taking the buckets off. They're more traditional about it. They're more respectful. But I don't know necessarily if it's going to kind of change the way things are right now.
But really, broken hands or broken faces? What's the bigger deal? Broken faces. I don't want to see, even though it was kind of cool, I don't want to see a picture of Mark Fraser's skull with a big hole in it. Because, if that happens again, unfortunately someone may, eat it pretty hard, if you know what I mean. Like, it's the fighting issue. Yes, it's an issue. Yes, there's the code, but there's bigger things to worry about than that. That's why just not a big deal whatsoever. I don't think that.
Well, as far as bigger things to worry about right now, I think we got a few bigger issues for the Jays lately on the diamond, eh?
Yeah, the Jays struggling pretty big last night as they dropped another one. Harrison, as a big Jays fan yourself, what do they really need to do here in order to get sort of, I wouldn't even say back on track, because I guess their longest win streak this season has been 3 games?
Yeah, it's as has been a problem with the Jays, I'd say, for the last 5-6 years or so. It's when one thing's going, another thing's not. Like we get a good pitching. Our starting pitching has been atrocious all year on the whole. And we get a quality start out of Josh Johnson just coming back. Big ups to him going 7 strong with just 1 earned run. But, we get a quality start out of him, but we play atrocious defense and no one can hit. And we just came out of a stretch where our offense was up to the 3rd-rated offense in baseball. We had Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion hitting the lights out, but we couldn't get a start to save our lives.
That's the thing. Where have R.A. Dickey and Mark Burley been all year long?
Okay. I'll answer this. Mark Burley's turning it around. Mark Burley's looking to be vintage, 8-second between pitches. Mark Burley crafty as ever, but RA is really starting to know he's a good guy and all, but you know what? These just watch tonight if he gets lit up, the post-game interview he gives, just the exasperated, oh, I'm working hard, it'll come. Like, come on, bud, let's figure it out. Your former Cy Young winner.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it seems like the lone bright spot
just
right
take
now
some
for the Jays
responsibility for it.
is Edwin Encarnacion, like you said, his 17th homer of the season. But and he's been seriously the most consistent piece right now for the Jays as they move forward deeper into their season. But time obviously running out right here, and as you said, Sean, when the pitching's going, the hitting's not going, and then when the hitting starts going, the pitching kind of dries up. So, they bring guys up from the minors. Ricky Romero got a couple of starts after he got demoted at the beginning of the season. Nothing to show for it, 0 for 2.
Have you seen how he's done down in AAA? Absolutely brutal.
Yeah, and they
man.
still brought him.
The
He
clock
wasn't.
is ticking on your career, bud.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I think Ricky Romero's major league career is over. I don't think we're ever gonna see in the city of Toronto the kind of expectations that we had placed on Romero.
Yeah,
to
I
be completely
agree.
honest.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the Jays right now, got a score update for you. The Jays and the San Francisco Giants are now tied at 0 going into the bottom of the 4th inning. Barry Zito just struck out Meiser Azuris for the 3rd out in the top of the 4th.
Seems good to see RA rolling.
Yeah.
Hey, see, I think he was listening to the podcast, chucking those knucklers down in San Fran. What a beautiful ballpark!
Well,
though,
we were lucky enough to watch RA the last time everyone up here in the press box actually got out to a Jays game, and RA pretty dominant performance, I would say.
When he's on, he's on.
Yeah.
We just need to see more of the Cy Young arm from both Dickey and
Josh Johnson,
Mark Burley.
Yeah.
I don't want the R.A. Dickey trade to go down as one of the worst trades of all time. Let's put it that way. I know it's going to be judged in years when Travis d'Arnaud and Noah Syndergaard come up for the Mets, but I don't want this to go down as a black mark on the Jays organization. But there's still time. I'm a pretty big Jays optimist, so let's turn it around. Let's at least have an exciting dog days of summer.
Yeah, and just before we wrap up this Jays talk, one last thing I just wanted to ask you guys here. A big part of Gibbons, at least the struggles, as Gibbons will say about his team, is that players are playing out of position due to the amount of injuries on the roster. How do you feel about his comments on that, and do you think that's an excuse that you can make?
I have one thing to say about John Gibbons, and I think it applies
No throwing Gibby under the bus.
I think it applies to the same mentality that brought Michel Therrien back to Montreal. You never rehire somebody you fired in professional sports. That's all I have to say.
What are your thoughts on that? Is it just because if you failed once, you'll fail again?
Look at the lack of success he had when his last go here in Toronto.
Well, he was 500 over 4 years.
We can't accept mediocrity in
That's
professional
true.
sports.
That's true. I'm sounding.
You could argue that the roster obviously wasn't up to par, but
our payroll was still pretty big. Like 05, 06, and 07, we were top 10 payroll in the league, which goes under the radar playing in the AL East with the likes of the Yankees and Red Sox. But just my little comment about players playing out of position. It's with all the injury, we're decimated with injuries, and in the organization, sometimes you're not going to have a third, a fourth string playing down in Class A Diddle Dot Texas or whatever it's called. So you need to make do with what you have, and the guys are shifting around the diamond, and the defense still isn't great, but they're doing what they can, and just hold off until Jose Reyes comes back. That's all I'm saying.
All right, guys, let's move on to the 5 minutes of fame. So we're going to go through some topics here, a minute a topic. Let's start it off with the Duncan Keith slash last night on Jeff Carter. Guys, your thoughts on a suspension, potentially, maybe out for the rest of the year?
I think absolutely a suspension. He should be done for the rest of the playoffs. We're seeing Harrison Kane take off right now. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Harrison, as we wrap up the show.
No longer in the press box.
Harrison has left the press box, but yeah, absolutely. Duncan Keith, that was one of the most violent things I've seen on the ice so far this year. Forget the Raffi Torres hits. Forget the Matt Cook antics in Ottawa, if you want to call them that. Forget the Dave Bolland running through Mike Richards. Duncan Keith slashing Jeff Carter in the face. There's no place in the game of hockey for that. And if the NHL really wants to put their foot down, they suspend him for the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the hit again, I mean, I know me and you looked at it a couple of times today. It looked pretty bad, obviously with the blood on the bench and stuff like that. But the one-hander, obviously, always it's going to raise some eyebrows due to the fact that obviously Carter wasn't facing him. It was a blindsided. I mean, you can't really call it I guess you could call it a blindsided hit, but it was a blindsided stick to the face, which makes it even worse. But, you know what, I might have to agree with you, Sean, and you got to discipline your players like that. And if Duncan Keith goes out for the season, or the playoffs, pardon me, then so be it. He has to basically serve the suspension, and I mean, Shanahan's got to set the precedent, right?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people give Brendan Shanahan a lot of flack, but he's doing the best job he can. It's unfortunate when you see things like this happen, and I really hope we don't see a suspension based on the non-injury of Jeff Carter. Thankfully, he was okay, but there's one thing I hate. There's nothing I hate more than seeing Shanahan dole out suspensions because a guy gets injured. Dole out suspension because of the act.
All right, let's move on here. So the new Raptors manager getting hired. So Brian Colangelo moving over here, still part of the operations though for Toronto Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. I believe he's moving over to a presidential position.
I believe Colangelo is getting so screwed right now. He's being the new, I think it's vice president of basketball operations, with absolutely no say in how the team is run. So essentially, the Raptors have brought in Masai Ujiri. A lot of success in Denver Nuggets. He's actually the one who pulled off the Carmelo Anthony trade to New York. So we know he's got the ability to pull the trigger on big moves if he needs to. And hopefully it's going to set a new, new precedent in the Raptors dressing room and the team's front offices, because this team has been struggling for a while now. And Colangelo was one of the most successful managers in the NBA coming into the Raptors. But I think Ujiri has more on his resume and brings new life. And it'll be interesting to see what he does with head coach Dwayne Casey. That's for sure.
No, I agree. But what I was going to ask you is, like you said earlier, you never rehire a coach that you fired. Obviously, he wasn't fired. He left Toronto, was our assistant GM a couple years back before he went over to Denver to be the general manager over there for the Nuggets. But now that he's back, and I mean, you've seen this in the past. I mean, you got a guy like Dave Nonis. You know, he's obviously moving into a role as a general manager, but was the assistant before. But in terms of a assistant leaving and then coming back, do you agree with that?
I think that's fine. He knows the way the team works. He left because he was offered a position Toronto wasn't ready to give to him at the time. Toronto is ready for the type of leadership he brings to the organization. I think this is a good move for the Raptors, and I'm finally excited to see the way the team is going to progress this year, especially with the late season addition of Rudy Gay into the lineup.
All right, the third thing on the list, we're going to talk about Andrea Bargnani, because his time in Toronto obviously limited. The amount of backlash on in the blog sphere right now is incredible, as people pretty much want to see him out of town as soon as humanly possible. But what's he worth now? And basically, do you think we'll get a good deal for him, Sean?
I think you see him go finish out his career in Italy, to be completely honest. I don't know if there's a market in the NBA right now for him. I don't know if there are any teams out there that want his skill set. I personally think that was one of the biggest busts as far as draft pick is concerned in NBA history. And I'm a Raptors fan. I think Andrea Bargnani has been absolutely garbage for the Raps, and I don't think that there is a market for him available. Masai Ujiri is going to have a really hard time getting any return on that trade, if at all.
Yeah, I heard earlier in the season that there was I think it was a Andrea Bargnani package. It might have been with Ed Davis when we still had him, and he would have been going to the Bulls for Carlos Boozer and another player. I don't remember exactly who it was, but I mean, at the time it looked pretty good, and then Bargnani went down with that injury, so the trade the speculation of the trade kind of just disappeared for a little bit. But You're right. He needs to get out of town, and I think that he will not be in a Raptors uniform by the time the season starts up next year. Moving on, though, let's talk about Tiger and the U.S. Open. Still the favorite, 7-2 odds right now to win the U.S. Open. Next on the list is Rory McIlroy at 16-1, and then Adam Scott.
How does
at,
Rory
20-1.
McIlroy get on to number 2 at that list? Tiger struggled last tournament. He did. Well, I think he finished at 8 over par for the entire tournament at the Memorial. The only thing with Rory, we have not seen a good showing from him at a single tournament on the PGA Tour yet this year. So I'm more surprised at Rory being the 16-1 odds and being the number 2 favorite to win the U.S. Open. I think Tiger walks away with it. Marion suits his game all too well. I think we're going to see Tiger play the same way he played at TPC Sawgrass to win the Players.
Well, I mean, it's not surprising that your number 1, 2, and 3 are the number 1, 2, and 3 golf ranking, players in the world. Tiger at number 1, Rory at number 2, and Scott at number 3. So, obviously you're going to put your money on the guys that are performing the best overall in terms of the year and in history. But I mean, Tiger's been at that number 1 spot now for how long?
He only retook it, I believe, closer to the end of last year. I honestly, I should know this. Can't quote me on it, but 4 wins. He's never gone into a U.S. Open having 4 wins before. He had the opportunity to go in with 5. That would have been absolutely unheard of. 5 wins, and June has just started. If Tiger had won at the Memorial this year, you know what? I don't know what it is over in China right now, but it's looking like it's the year of the Tiger here in North America.
Yeah. Okay, and let's wrap up this edition of In the Press Box with your favorite sports movie of all time. Sean, we'll start with you, and then I'll tell the folks at home what my personal favorite is.
I like this ending on a little bit of a lighter note. I've got a couple really good sports movies, and you know what? Some of them are you got to go with the classics. I mean, like, nobody dislikes Hoosiers. I've never met someone who doesn't like Hoosiers, but I'm a big Caddyshack guy. And I think Bill Murray, his best movies are the Caddyshack movies.
Love Bill Murray.
There's Gophers. I don't know. Caddyshack is just, I grew up watching that movie. I've wanted to be a member at Bushwood Country Club my entire life.
Oh, that's very fair. I like the decision, but I'm going to go with something a little more, I said a little more 1990s, if you will. But it's Friday Night Lights. I love Boobie Miles. And, it's a story where, obviously you'd love to see the team win it all at the end. And I like the movie so much that it doesn't make it kind of that happy ending, sort of Disney like finish. It's sad, it's uplifting and inspirational, but at the same time, the boys don't win it all, but they learn a lot while they're going through the struggle together, losing, their best player. It's just all about facing adversity, and I think that's what sports is all about.
I like that because when you said that Disney ending, it really reminded me of Remember the Titans, although it was a Disney movie that didn't have your storybook ending either, but still one of the greatest sports movies of all time. All right, that's it for this edition of Inside the Press Box. I'm Sean Bisson.
Yeah, I'm Marco Mendolia.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.